Good evening and welcome to round 6 of the USAC 1974 championship hosted by International Simracing Organization, ISO for short. And we are here tonight at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway for the Indianapolis 500. And with me in the booth tonight we have a relative newcomer to the booth, but our most recent race winner at ISO, Gabriele del Piccolo. Good evening, Gabriele.
Good evening. Here we are, the capital of auto racing.
And it'll certainly prove to be the capital of speed as well tonight. We saw some incredible qualifying runs last weekend, and I can't help but think that the race will be even more incredible than the qualifying was.
For sure. We have many drivers who can point a win. So I think the first 5 rows, the drivers should be very, very competitive.
You're certainly very right about that. And who the drivers are on those opening 5 rows, we will go through a little bit later in the show when we get closer to the race. Good evening, Berlin. Good to see you here, and hope you'll enjoy the show, as I hope everyone else will enjoy this. So as we said, we are at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, the 2.5 mile rectangular oval in Indiana, and we'll be going for 200 frantic laps, which will equal 500 grueling miles. And I'm certain that all the drivers will be feeling the strain and tear after this race. So what do you think, Gabriele?
Well, I think as they are showing on the warm-up laps, Janik, the pole sitter, will be in terrific shape on his home. Then I think David Jakes and Thiago Canola will be other drivers who can do their best.
That's certainly very true indeed, and if we have a quick look at the point standing, since you mentioned David Yates, who is currently sitting 5th in the overall standings at 860 points, and I believe you mentioned Thiago Canola as well, who is sitting 2nd in the championship on 1200 points.
But
Leading
we
the
have
Sorry, go ahead, Gabriele.
the leader of the championship, Jacob Fredriksson, who set the 70th time, is the leader of the championship with 1,440 points. He won the California 500, second in Phoenix 150, and second in the Heat 2 qualification for the California 500. Back to you.
And he'll be one to watch for sure, and equal second in the standings is Cesariusz Szlapinski on 1200 points. I believe he is in the top 10 at least in qualifying. I can't remember his exact position.
Yes, is in fourth position, Cesariusz Szlapinski. He drives a Fiat Mark V with Ford engine.
And I believe the highest placed Ford engine car on the grid.
Yes.
So that's
The second one was David Dick's car, the Eagle 72, the white Eagle 72, number 44. And the last car was driven by Eric Plana, starting from 31st place.
And it's interesting that, because I'd expect the Ford to be a little bit faster on these wide, fast ovals, but clearly the Offenhauses, currently at least, is keeping up. And just to finish off the points, Peter Lavac is 4th in the points on 960. Unfortunately, Peter won't be here racing with us tonight, as he is, after his paralysis due to an illness, he is on the mend, but is at a rehabilitation center away from home, and therefore he isn't able to race, but I see that he is in the chat and watching the broadcast, so that's great to see. Evening, Peter. Hope everything is well with you.
Wish you were here again. Another driver, interesting driver, is I think Richard Wilkes, who drive the M60, the McLaren, the same car who won the 1974, the real 1974 race.
And I certainly agree with you, and I know Richard Wilkes has been putting in a lot of laps, a lot of practice, a lot of setup work, so we can certainly expect him to be way up there in terms of the positions in the race. Quickly to also have a look at is the way the points will be handed out at the end of this 500-mile race. While we've had this point tally before, we have first place will score 1,000 points, second will get 800, third 700, fourth 600, fifth 500, sixth 400, and then from 7th backwards it drops by 50 points down to 12th position.
That's right.
And one of our drivers, Jason White, has just said 15 minutes to go, the longest 15 minutes of the year. And, I can certainly understand what he means. It must be unnerving to be being forced to wait to get going in this kind of race.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And also, this race is part of the Lukáš Vidra Trophy, and with that, the points will also be paid out to the top 10 in the race in the Lukáš Vidra Trophy 2020 Championship, where the first place driver will get 15 points, second will get 12, third 10, and then there's a 1 point, sorry, not a full 1 point drop, third get 10th, then fourth get 9, fifth get 8 points, and then from 6th down to 10th there's a 1 point drop from 5 points to 1 point.
Point standings after round 2 of Lukáš Vidra Trophy. First place, Tiago Canola, 30 points. Second place, Richard Coxon, 18 points. Third, Pascal Mikula, 15 points. Both Jason White, also 15 points. And fifth, Cesarius Klapinski, 14 points.
And it should be noted in those points that one of the Lukáš Vidra races we have done was the DRM 1984 race, I believe it was, at the Norris Ring, where there were two 15 point 15 points handed out because there were two classes, and Tiago Canola on the last and final lap managed to get the lead and the win in the lower class of that, the Group 4/B series. So that's one of the reasons he is up there, but also because he's a very, very talented driver.
Absolutely. He's starting from the first row today. Row the car driven by the best rookie of the 1974 race, Poncho Carter.
Give me 1 second and I'll get that up on screen as well. There we go, I think I have it up on screen. So, the grid overall, as I believe the driver's briefing is going on the server. Let's have a quick look. Yep. Pardon me as I try to get the screen back. There we are. So, as Gabriele said, the Poncho, I believe that's the Poncho Carter car, lines up on pole position in the hands of Brian Yannick for this evening. Eagle 74 Offie with Firestone tires with an amazing pole time of 194.241 miles an hour. And that was probably one of the most frantic 4 laps I've ever seen in the Indianapolis virtual qualifying that we've held at ISO so
Absolutely.
far.
Brilliant drive from Brian.
And it should also be noted in terms of Brian's qualifying that he actually waved off his first qualifying run, and at least me, who was in the booth and having a look, felt that was a bit on the wrong side, but it proved to be a very good idea indeed, since he put it together very well after that. And his teammate in an Eagle 72 Offie with Firestone tires
Tiago Canola.
is Tiago Canola indeed, at a speed of 193.903 miles an hour. For a very long time, the provisional pole sitter, I think he set his time in the first batch of drivers, so the first 12 drivers to set a time in qualifying.
Interesting is both cars were prepared by Robert Fletcher in the real 1974 race.
They were indeed, and I do believe Brian and Tiago are working together a little bit to try and get the cars up to speed. On row 2, we have the first of our McLarens, an M16B with an Offie powerhouse in the back on Goodyear tires. Not a newcomer to our bunch, but first race for him at ISO, I believe, Austin Ogonowski. One of the, I suppose we could say, aliens of sim racing. Generally very quick no matter what car he's in, and very neat to see him partake in this, and for sure he'll be one to watch.
He drive the Coyote Foyt.
It's Cesariusz
okay. Ogonowski drive the McLaren M16B Offenhauser with Goodyear tires.
Yep, and Cesariusz Lapinski is 4th on the grid, as mentioned earlier, in the Coyote 74 Foyt-powered car with Goodyear tires. If you want to go through the rest of the grid, Gabriele,
okay,
go ahead.
Okay, Jonathan. So we have row 3, number 3, Richard Wilkes, McLaren M16D Offenhauser. Number 15, on the outside, Alberto Ibanez, Eagle 74 Offenhauser. Row 4, number 5, Jason White, Eagle 74 Offenhauser Firestone. And David Jakes, number 44, Eagle 72 Foyt, Goodyear tires. Row 5, number 69, David Yunt, Eagle 72 Offenhauser, Goodyear. Number 98, Jules Habas, Eagle 74 Offenhauser, Firestone. Row 6, on the inside, number 73, Alberto Ichino, McLaren M16 CD Offenhauser, Goodyear. And On the outside, number 48, David Saber, AAR Eagle 74, Offenhauser, Goodyear. Row 7, number 28, Anders Nielsen, Eagle 72, Offenhauser, Goodyear. And number 9, Adam Ackman, Eagle 72, Offenhauser, Firestone. Row 8, number 18, Lee Moore, Eagle 72, Offenhauser, Firestone. And number 20, Croatian Raul Yareb, Eagle 73, Offenhauser, Goodyear. Row 9, number 24, Jakob Fredriksson, Kingfish 73, Offenhauser, Firestone. Alongside number 77, Ray Riddell, McLaren M16C, Offenhauser, Goodyear. Row 10, number 1, Bruno Chacon, Riley 74, Offenhauser, Firestone. Number 86, Dave Miller, McLaren M16B, Offenhauser, Goodyear. Row 11, number 59, Nick Woodbury, Eagle 70, Offenhauser, Firestone. Number 40, Jason Fitch, Eagle 74, Offenhauser, Goodyear. Row 12, number 55, Francois Ramman, Eagle 74, Offenhauser, Firestone. And number 60, Filippo Marazzi, Eagle 72, Offenhauser, Goodyear. Row 13, number 68, Alan Forster, McLaren M16C, Offenhauser, Goodyear. Number 45, Mick Chapman, Eagle 72, Offenhauser, Goodyear. Row 14, number 56, François Bovy, McLaren M16B, Offenhauser, Firestone. Number 76, Tim Hiller, Eagle 72, Offenhauser, Firestone. Row 15, number 4, Jan Kowalski, Eagle 72, Offenhauser, Goodyear. And number 51, Simon Watman, Parnelli Jones, Offenhauser, Firestone. Row 16, number 79, Eric Plana, Canyon Coyote Foyt, Firestone. Number 63, Hervé Sabater, Raska Atlanta 74, Offenhauser, Firestone. And in the last spot of the race, number 8, Dana Schurer, McLaren M16C, Offenhauser, Goodyear tires.
Thank you very much, Gabriele, and certainly one to watch. Looking at the last half of the grid, I would say is Nick Woodbury in that Eagle 70. Got some really good pace out of that machine and certainly very impressive in qualifying. Jason Fitch with that Eagle 74 is probably going to work his way up the field, but the greatest mover-upper, presumably early on in the race, will be Dana Schurer in that McLaren. Late entry, didn't do qualifying because she didn't feel comfortable, but certainly one of our quicker drivers and probably one of those that will be there towards the end of the race.
Probably should be the top climber of the race, I think.
That's certainly very likely indeed. Just give me a couple of moments here to get it all sorted out. 3 minutes, perfect timing. So with that, since we are just a few moments away from the race, we will hand it over to Jim Neighbors to sing Back Home Again in Indiana for our pleasure and joy ahead of this fantastic Indianapolis 500 race.
Home again in Indiana, and it seems that I can see the gleaming and the light still burning bright through the bitter rose for me. The new mown hay in all its fragrance through the fields I used to roam. When I dream about the moonlight on the lowlands, when I long for my Indiana home.
Thank you very much to Jim Neighbors for putting on probably one of the sweetest sounding songs ever to be heard alongside a motor racing event. And as we are just in the end of the warm-up, my apologies, we can see that Cesare Ślapinski is currently quite a lot quicker than both Austin Oganowski, David Yates and Juha Boos. Very interesting to see. I reckon he will be up there, but with that fixed front wing, I think he'll have trouble in the longer runs.
Should be, but you know, he's driving the AJ Foyt car, and the AJ Foyt car was provided by the Foyt rebadged Ford engine, and I think will be very competitive alongside race. And we can mention also the engines as the one of the main differences about the cars. Most majority of the grid has was powered by the Offenhauser engine. We can talk about the Offenhauser as a straight 4 cylinders engine.
Certainly, we can do that as we wait for the grid to form.
Okay.
So the Offenhauser is an inline 4-cylinder, producing around 820 horsepower, slightly different between the engines, obviously, depending on how well you looked after them and how optimistic you were with how you tweaked them. A more violent power delivery than the Foyt engine, and as you mentioned, Gabriele, it powers a majority of the 1974 entry list.
Yeah, this engine has a single Garrett turbocharger, produces the power and his 820 bhp at 8,500 rpm, and has a peak torque at 5,000 rpm. So simple and light structure, and is the cheaper engine of the grid.
Certainly a good description of how the engine works there. And the other engine that is in the field is the Foyt Quad-Cam V8, based on the Ford concept of those years, but as Ford left the project altogether, Foyt took it over and certainly did a very good job in improving it.
Yes, this V8 quad-cam, technically called dual overhead camshaft, was formerly developed and built by Ford Motor Company, but Ford has His withdrawal at the end of 1972 season and then was rebadged as Foyt. His engine produced an amount of 825 bhp at 9,000 revs and has his peak torque at 7,000. Characteristic is bulkier, have a bulkier structure, is EV, but has a better fuel consumption and made its best on lower turbo pressures as required in new 1974 rules.
That's certainly true, as, sorry to cut you off, but the green flag is about to fly. Here we go, the green flag is out, the race is underway, and it looks like Thiago Canola has taken the lead. Oh, they're 3 wide going into turn 1 there. Oh, a bit of contact, but it looks like they survive. Alan Forster very wide there, but it looks like everyone has survived the opening turn. Oh, there's still more contact between Yannick and Slapinski. That's certainly not what you want this early in the race.
Yes.
As everyone streams through turn 4 for the opening lap, Canola still in the lead. Oh, a big wheel in the middle of the field there.
Is about to is in the slipstream of Alberto Ibanez, who made a very good start.
That's certainly true. And coming up the inside, there's David Yates going into turn 2 on the inside of Richard Wilkes. Very nicely done there.
And he does.
Indeed, and a very big wiggle there for David Saber sitting in behind Juha Boos. Obviously everyone will be trying to be careful and survive these opening laps, but it's also a case of when everyone is bunched up, it's far easier to actually make use of the opportunities of passing.
In the early stage you have to be very careful to do not brush the tires into the wall, because the towing time is at least 1 minute.
It certainly is, and we can see here Dana Schurer started 33rd. Going on to the 3rd lap, she is 26th, so taking it easy, getting up to grip with how the car is on this particular track. And we have 32 racing. I wonder who we are missing, I'm not entirely sure. I thought everyone was here, but clearly not.
There is a multiple draft, 23rd position. Tim Hill and Nick Woodbury.
Let's see. There they are, I think. I seem to recognize those cars. Oh, and right up behind there, that's one of the cars. I'm not entirely sure who that was. Gonna see from that
Mick
far
Chapman.
away. Oh, it was Mick Chapman.
And Dana Schurer pass him.
Oh, so Mick must have been held up with that then.
And Mick tries again.
Oh, and right down to the grass, that's not good. And up in behind there is Filippo Marazzi in the STP car, looking for an opportunity to make his way past. Looks like he should have the run. Oh, as we can see that Nick Woodbury a little bit wide. Looks like he is good to go for now, as Filippo Marazzi, oh, and up ahead Tim Hiller looked up the inside, and there goes Marazzi up the inside, and further back here we have Bovi and Eric Plana going side by side into turn 1.
Woodbury so close, Bruno Chacon.
Oh, and we can sort of see there that Nick has a lot of speed in the turn, but doesn't look like he quite have... Ooh, as up the inside dives Dana Schurer, really, really aggressive. Wow, that was one heck of a pass. Good work from Nick to be able to see her.
Amazing, 9th place recovered in 4 laps.
Absolutely immense pace there. And up in the front as well with immense pace is Thiago Canola at the moment, enjoying a 2.5 second lead over Austin Ogonoski in second and Brian Yannick in third. So very impressive pace up in the front of the field. As we're slowly going back, it looks like David Junt and David Sabre is having a little bit of a scuffle, with Jakob Ferguson having a watching brief. Jason White currently occupies the last points paying position in the Wells Panelli Joints Racing team car. Then we have Anders Nilsson, who has worked his way up a little bit in the Eisenhower Brayton Racing entry in 13th. Adam Hackman in behind him with Alberto Junior in 15th. Dave Miller currently in 16th, with the battle for 17th still looking strong there for Forster, Riddall and Jereb. I noticed they were battling earlier and it seems like they are continuing. And Tim Hill and Lee Moore still going at it. Lee Moore, I know, had his lineup looked at beating his good friend Anders Nilsson. Not sure if he'll be able to do that at the moment, but anything is possible this early in the race. I noticed Dana Schurer also took another position off Jason Fitch that time. And now Fitch under attack from Nick Woodbury. In that front air given Eagle 70. Holding back for now, although his speed in the corners are very impressive indeed. Let's jump over Tim Hiller for a moment here. The Webster Racing Eagle 72.
He's following Lee Moore. He takes the inside. Yes.
Oh, the cutback
He does.
Cutback, he could. No, he doesn't. So Lee was looking for the cutback there, couldn't quite make it, but Tim is a little bit wide there. Or maybe not. I wonder if it wouldn't be preferable for them to work together. They could close the gap to the cars in front. Although that is easier said than done in this kind of heated situation.
Lee Moore is sliding a bit.
Yeah, for sure. That will have been a bit of a scary moment.
But he's clever to take over the inside line. Now, they're there. That is. Should be clever for him to follow him and catch up the guys in front as Rowley Reb.
Certainly, and Rowley Reb himself is in a bit of a battle there with Alan Forster, trying to look up the inside, but Forster was able to hold on. I noticed also further up in the list, the battle for 9th is still going is being very heated indeed, as David Saber, David Junt, Jacob Fredriksson, Jason White, Anders Nilsson and Adam Hackman are all running in a line together. As David Junt has one hallelujah loose moment out of 4, able to hold on to it, and sitting in the draft is gaining a bit of time. As Jason White looks up the inside of Jacob Ferguson there, I'm not sure if he's actually wanting to go for the move. I think he more is looking for the clean air. Junt again very loose through 2. Rift 2 and 4 is where he has a bit of trouble in terms of his setup.
Oh, Forster.
Now Jason White loses a position, I think. Looks like it. He loses a position to Anders Nilsson. Now Adam Hackman will be smelling blood in the water.
And
when Brian Yannick
Austin
is...
Ogonowski is still is in battle with Brian Janik for the second place.
Ooh. Austin with a bit of a loose moment there. I wonder if Austin is feeling a bit of tire wear this early on in the race. He was sitting in second, so he has lost a position, and it looks like his car is a tad bit loose at the moment. As we can see the whole field going into turn 1 as they stream past. Oh, still that battle for 20, I believe that's 21st or 22nd to 3 places back between Shure and the rest is very heated indeed. And it looks like lap traffic will soon be coming into effect, as I noticed there's only about 5 to 8 seconds from Eric Plana back to our leader Thiago Canola. So that will be another big task for everyone to work with, being lapped and lapping.
12th position, Anders Nilsson is trying to pass Jakob Fredriksson.
Also
the
a Swedish
11th
battle.
Slipstream. Go to the inside.
Looks like he secures that position for now. Looked like Jakob backed out of that a little bit to make sure they would be able to run together there, as he has a loose moment coming out of 4. And that's something we will see a lot of, I reckon, especially later in the run.
User channel timed out.
We are still about 10 to make that 13 to 15 laps away from the first pit stops. But later we go in this run, everyone will struggle more and more with their tires. It looks like everyone is spreading out quite well. Acerclinth, Brian Yannick and Filippo Marazzi and Jason White. Jareb Kowalski? Whatever is going on? That looks to be some kind of... Looks like there's some kind of mass disconnection of some kind. Whatever is going on here? It's so unfortunate for all of them. What? So Yannick out. He was one of the hot shots. And Marazzi. Still waiting to see if White and Jareb and Kowalski retires, but... Oh dearie me, that's very unfortunate indeed. However did that happen? Well, I'm very apologetic there, Francois. I didn't see the chat in the broadcast chat since we were doing other things. Very sorry to see you not be able to race, as I know you put in a lot of work to try and get ready for this race. So Thiago Canola is still in the lead. Austin Ogonowski is sitting in second, a very lonely second now that Brian Yannick unfortunately has retired with that disconnection. Eric Plana getting out of the way as Serge Lapinski is sitting in third with Ibanez in fourth. Here comes David Yates to lap Eric Plana, and very nicely done by Eric there. Clearly moves out to show David that okay, go by me now. Very neatly done. We have Bors in 6th, Richard Wilkes in 7th, David Saber in 8th, David Junt in 9th, and Anders Nilsson currently inside the top 10. Egil Fröksen, his fellow Swede, is in 11th with Adam Hackman in 12th. Alberto Equino in 13th with Dave Miller in 14th, Ray Riddle in 15th, Alan Forster 16th, Tim Hiller 17th, Lee Moore currently 18th, Bruno Chacon in 19th, Dana Scherer 20th, and slowly but surely looks to be working her way up the field. Nick Woodbury currently 21st in that Eagle 70 of his. Mick Chapman in 22nd, Jason Fitch in that Eagle 74 in 23rd, Jean-Francois Bovy in 24th, Simon Wattman 25th, and Hervé Sabaté 26th, and Eric Plana in 27th. Oh, as there goes 2 cars lapping that Canyon Coyote machine. Oh, and that's Nick Woodbury, I think. Oh, dearie me, Eric. You don't need to be that worried about letting someone past. Hopefully there's no damage to his machine there. Unfortunately, now we can see here all the retirees in the form of Yannick Marazzi, Jason White, Raul Jareb, Jan Kowalski. So very unfortunate indeed, some kind of internet situation. At least 2 of them in the same, I believe, generally the same area of the US, so possibly some kind of local thing going on. I know Jason said there were rainy weather outside, so possibly the weather has worsened to some degree. Very unfortunate indeed, but hopefully everyone is still able to race will have a good one. Also, I noticed someone is heading for the pits. That's Alan Forster, very early indeed, lap 21 already. I don't think that could possibly be a planned pit stop. Oh, it looks like he's actually running all the way through the pits, so he is using that to get out of the way. Very interesting choice. So Scherer now in 19th. And there goes Sabathé being lapped by... oh, and a big loose moment in the dirty air. That's Richard Wilkes lapping him. And there goes Ibanez up the inside of Simon Wattman. So Velospanelli on Velospanelli passing there. It looks like now everyone has more or less spread out and running their own kind of race, really. And there's Alan Forster again, getting out of the way. I wonder if he is looking to park it, possibly. That's the second time I've seen him dive for the pit lane. I hope he continues. He's had some very good results in the past. And when it's staccato, I'm checking what's going on in the broadcast chat, so my apologies if it becomes very... oh dear me, that's a lot of skid marks. I wonder if we've had an accident along the way. When it becomes a bit jumpy in the picture, it's because I'm checking what's going on in the chat, so my apologies for that. As Alan Forster is down low, I wonder if that's a parking motion. Certainly looks like it. It is indeed very unfortunate, but we have our, I believe that's our 6th retiree in this race. Oh, as Tim Hiller running a little bit loose up high out of turn 4 there. In on the first pit stop laps. From what I've been told, the earliest you can make a pit stop and get away with it is 28. So one more lap and we will likely start to see pit stops happening. Unfortunately, it seems like Gabriele hasn't been able to rejoin yet, so if anyone who has retired would like to join up in the booth, then let me know. We'll sort something out until Gabriele returns. As we see up ahead, position change between Alberto Ibanez, Senior that is, and Juha Boos. Looks like these two are trying to work together to save a little bit of fuel. Possibly as Canola is now
User joined your channel.
quite a bit out in front as
User joined your channel.
it looks like I'm now joined by both Gabriele and Jason. Really sorry to see that, Jason. Looked like you had a good race going up until that point.
Yeah, it's a peculiar situation there. It looks like a bunch of us were kicked out at once. Due to some kind of bandwidth ripple. It couldn't have been anything local because if you look at the chat in YouTube, it was myself, Janik, looked like Yareb, and then one other person, but Yareb is on the other side of the, he's in
Croatia, yeah.
He's in Croatia. I mean, and and you might say, well, maybe it's something local with Janik and myself because we're both in Detroit, but how does that answer that Tiago's still running?
That's very
So,
true, very true.
so I get the only thing that I can think of is that a lot of people have pointed out that gaming has caused because of the COVID crisis has gone through the roof, and bandwidth is being stressed a lot more than normal these days. So. Maybe we just, yesterday iRacing was running their Indianapolis 500 and I remarked to a friend of mine, I'm glad we're not running ours today because we'd be competing for them with bandwidth, but it's just, there's a lot more demands on bandwidth today. So it could be something as simple as that. And on the chat, everybody remarked that it happened the same way. It kicked us to our main menu of the game, not to the desktop. So that points to like just a loss of connection.
Yeah.
Boom. Not a game crash. So,
yeah, that's very unfortunate.
In a weird way, this is easier to process because it wasn't because of something I did wrong. So,
true enough. If that's the way it works for you, then fair enough.
Yeah. All right.
Oh, as we can see, everyone now heading for the pit lane, lap 30,
Oh,
but
boy.
a couple is still staying out on track.
Well,
Both
some
Adam
people-
Hackman and David Junt is going for another lap, as is Richard Wilkes, as is Asai Shlapinski.
Is Gabriele back in the booth now?
And Gabriele is back as well, but I think we
That's
could get away
problem.
with being 3 in the booth if...
No, I don't
If
want
we
to.
would
I don't
like.
want to. No, it's all right. I don't want to step on your toes. You guys have got a plan for broadcast. I'll talk to you guys later.
Okie dokie. Sorry to see that happen to you, Jason, but
Mm.
hope you'll enjoy the rest of the show.
Yeah, I'll be watching. Thanks, guys.
User
Thank you.
disconnected from your channel.
Oh, what a pity.
Certainly yes. So, Sasai Shlapinski now in the pits. Richard Wilkes decides to go for one more lap. He has certainly been able to conserve a lot of fuel in this opening stint. That'll give him an immense advantage later on in the race. David Junt also going longer. I know he likes to follow whatever the quicker drivers do. So he can probably see, okay, it looks like Richard Wilkes is going another lap, then I'll try to do the same. And then Dana Schurer up into third. She's also been able to conserve a lot of fuel. And then we have Austin Ogonowski now in the lead position with Thiago Canola about a couple of seconds further back. So that's a lead change when all the pit stop has played out. Oh, and Edmund Hackman is out. Oh, looks like that's possibly a blown engine. Not sure, that's seemed like a blown engine kind of parking, but can't know for sure, as Hervé Sabathier has retired as well. I didn't see when that happened, but unfortunately another driver retires, as Eric Plana has been into the pits now to make his first pit stop, as is Dana Schurer. So let's see where she comes out of the pits. And this is one of the rules we have implemented here, that you have to run with as much of the car as possible on the apron up until you're out of turn 2, just to make sure we avoid as many issues with drivers leaving the pits as possible.
Drivers that would escape from the pits have to stay below the yellow line.
Which is far more difficult than it would seem at first glance. See here, jumping on board with Richard Wilkes, currently in 5th position. USAC isn't quite sure about going up the inside of Jean-Francois Bovey there, but Bovey lets him past. 3rd, 4th and 5th is running together and very closely indeed this early on in the race. Gear up, so Richard Wilkes has decided to go into cruise gear. And down into race gear again, I think that was. So not quite happy at this distance behind the car to where his gearing is at the moment.
Fortunately, we have 7 drivers withdrawn for the race. The first one is Jan Kowalski, car number 4, Raul Arab, car number 20, Jason White, car number 5, Pippo Merazzi, car number 60, Brian Janik, the pole sitter, the car number 21, Alan Forster in the car 78, Hervé Sabaté, the car number 63, and final retired Adam Ackman into the car 9.
Indeed, very unfortunate for all of those drivers, but as Jason alluded to, the general way the world is at the moment, with many still living, or at least being at home more than they usually are, and this being a Sunday evening, everyone is probably home doing either racing, simulator racing somewhere, or they're watching TV or watching Netflix or whatever is going on, and that's one of the reasons why we had that mass loss of drivers early on in this race. Seeing as there's a bit of a lull in the action, so to speak, no major battles going on as far as I can see. Although
probably for third place, Cesarius Klapinski and David Jakes. Probably, and also for the sixth place between Juha Boss and Anders Nilsson. They are very close. And the set is fastest time in 47.395.
They'll certainly start fighting soon, but while we wait for that to happen, with the first pit stops being done pretty much on cue, some drivers running a little bit longer, let's have a quick look at the how the fuel will be working in this event. There are a rule that is pointed out, the fuel allotment rule, that each car is limited to 280 gallons, or around 1060 liters, which is equivalent to 7 full tanks.
Yep.
And for us, as for more likely for the drivers themselves, that means that the maximum fuel that they can use per lap is 1.38 gallons, or
equal to 5.3 liters per lap. Well, we have to mention that in 1974, onboard fuel capacity was reduced from the 70 US gallons down to 40 US gallons, and fuel tanks were only allowed on the left side of the car, with the exception of a small pickup tank. An energy-absorbing material was to be placed in the spot formerly occupied by the right side tank. This was due to the several safety issues happened in the 1973 edition.
And I'd say that's certainly a good call, especially Swede Savage's crash in 1973 here at Indianapolis was one of those that really showed that something had to be done in that regard, because the amount of fuel he was carrying at that time was, I think that was him coming right out of the pit stop. He had done like 1 or 2 laps before that crash, and clearly that was one of the contributing factors to why it went as it went in the end.
The other one was the accident happened to salt water. Happened on the early stage of the 73 edition of the race, and many cars was involved, and too much fuel was out of the car, so they decided to reduce the amount. Also, in the wake of the oil crisis.
Oh, indeed. There were that factor as well. And it's certainly such that no matter which way you look at it, that's the best course of action. And as we were chatting about that, very end of that, Thiago Canola was let up into the lead. Looked like Austin Ogonowski backed off. Ooh, as we have had someone crash heavily in turn 4. I saw a lot of debris. Let's see if we can possibly find... Oh, that was Tim Hiller. Oh, dearie me.
Too bad.
That's very unfortunate. Let's see if we can catch what happened. Oh, he stroked the wall coming out of turn 3. That unsettled the car, possibly even broke the rear right suspension, and the car became uncontrollable, and unfortunately a very big accident and the end of Tim's race. That's
Here's
also
to mention also a very good battle for the 5th place. Jula Boss, Richard Wills and Anders Nilsson.
And I know for a fact Anders Nilsson, I was chatting a little bit before the race. We had a collaboration day, the practice race ahead of this event, and he had a sore shoulder after 28 laps. So he wasn't sure as he sneaks up inside of Richard Wilkes. Looks like Wilkes will hold on around outside though, he does. Anders wasn't sure if he would be able to do the 500 laps needed today, so it will be interesting to see how he gets on later in the race, but for now it looks like he's doing very well indeed.
There's another beautiful battle between Dan Schurer and Lee Moore. Ooh, Thiago Canola, fastest lap, 47.011.
Wow, that is really quick in race trim. That's not very far off the quickest times we saw in qualifying. Ooh, as Lee Moore has the biggest loose I've seen around this track in race trim, is able to hold on to it and actually gets a run on Dana Schurer down the front stretch. If he gets this to work, this will be the pass of the event. It looks like he will indeed have made that stick. He has indeed. Very impressive indeed.
And the battle for first place is closing on between Richard Wilkes, Jura Boss and Anders Nilsson. Very interesting. They are fully weighed up Alberto Ibanez.
So let's see, while I try to find my way there, I'm a little bit behind on schedule, but there we are. Back to the action. We have Richard Wilkes, Johan Olsen, and Anders Nilsson still going at it. 5th, 6th and 7th. So now Richard Wilkes is at the front of this as Nick Woodbury's put a lap down. That's another friend of Anders Nilsson, and I believe Anders is the one who brought him here. Very nice to see Nick doing very well so far in that very, very old car. So the oldest car in the field. But also with it being one of the front-aired cars of yesteryear, even without the wings, it is very nicely balanced. So that's the benefit of that car. It's not as streamlined and quick in a straight line as the other cars, but it should have a decent bit of handling to help it along the way. There goes Johan Bors back past Anders Nilsson going into turn 3. Something else to take of note as we cross over the quarter distance in this race. Beside the LVT points and the USAC championship points, we will also be awarding the Jäger Award for the driver who experiences the hardest bit of luck in either practice, during the race, post-race, like in the nearest, like, I don't know, probably an hour or so after the race, if there's scrutineering or something, for example. And the Bob Wilson Award, so called after our dear friend Bob Wilson, who joined us for racing for about 2.5 years, but unfortunately passed away about 2 years ago now, I believe. He was especially very interested in doing these oval races. Was very friendly, very helpful with anything, and would happily discuss whatever was going on. So the Bob Wilson Award is simply put about being either the most helpful, the most friendly, the whole cut of being a good human being and a good racer in terms of your interaction with other drivers and other people surrounding the event.
Meanwhile, 5th, Richard Wilkes set his own fastest time in 47.034.
Wow, so very, very tight up the front with the quickest times. Very impressive to see.
That goes for 3rd position, David Jakes and Cesarius Kopinski.
Finally found it. So we're on board with the Canyon Coyote of Cesarius Kopinski, the AVA Floyd car of 1974. Up ahead, there's the Eagle 73, is it? For this event, in the hands of David Yates, and we can
Eagle
clearly
72.
hear Schlapinski's same
72.
fuel.
Eagle 7, David Jakes drive the Eagle 72 quality kit.
For Big Simon Racing. Team he's very well versed with. He's raced for those who did Kart 88 as well. As Eric Palmer gets out of the way of David Yates, and now Schlapinski will want for him to do the same and let him past. that Slapinski wants, but that unfortunately breaks up that battle a little bit. It looks like those two are the closest battles on track at the moment. Certainly seems like it, so still a battle between Ibanez, Anders Nilsson and Juha Bols is going on, a bit more spread out than it were previously. But still the dirty air playing in, of course, and causing them all kinds of trouble. Let's take just a couple of laps right on board with Thiago Canola. You can listen to the Offenhauser engine at work and check out Thiago's lines and how he navigates this track as at a very high rate of speed in the
We are close to the second window of pits.
Apologies, I have a bit of a lag. We are indeed. Time certainly flies when you're having fun. Lap 59 started for the leader, and I notice his pit crew has called for him to head for pit lane. Let's see if he decides to go into the pits or if he will go one more lap. No signal to head into the pits yet at least, so it looks like he is happy to go at least one more lap.
Simon Watson has retired from the race.
Oh dear me, that's very unfortunate indeed. Whatever happened to Simon? Let's see if we can actually catch it on broadcast. It's not a given that that's going to be possible.
Also, Nick Woodbury is charging on Bruno Chacon for the 60th position.
Oh, he is indeed. So that's Raskar versus Eagle 70. Very different cars, but clearly going at a similar speed. And we can also see that there are pit stops going on. Both Ogonowski and Canola has just headed into pit lane.
Jakes.
Let's actually see exactly where they have come out. So Slapinski is keeping on. Richard Wills goes for another lap. Both Juha Bols and Anders Nilsson heads for pit lane. And what about David Junt?
David Junt is in soldering on 5th place.
Yep, and it looks like he's going for another lap. Noticed one car was heading into pit lane. Here comes Canola and Ogonowski, now much closer once again after the pit stops. Oh, and actually 45, that's Chapman, isn't it? Not deterred by having Canola right behind him. Obviously Chapman has not pitted yet, I don't think, so he has less fuel and more pace as he signals that he's heading into the pit lane this lap. But let's see if Ogonowski will be able to keep up with him. Yakes in effective third by the looks of things, with Lee Moore yet to pit in 7th, Dana Shura yet to pit in 8th, and Roberto Ibanez in 9th at the moment. Juha Boos actually being lapped by Schlapinski after his pit stop. So that's impressive. That's how much time you lose in the pits. So Schlapinski now heads into the pit lane, as does Richard Wilkes. And that's then Anders Nilsson right behind Juha Boos, so they are still line astern in this race. Oh, that would have been a close call between Schlapinski and Junt, as Junt headed out of his pit stall. There goes Schlapinski out of the pits. Looks like Richard Wilkes is taking 2 times, so that's why his pit stop is slightly slower. I know Anderson Nilsson at least was talking about only changing the right side tires for 3 to 4 stints. So that's very interesting to see that Richard Wilkes seemed to be using a lot more tire than what Anders Nilsson is doing. That's Nick Woodbury and Brun Chacon in the pits. Looks like Chacon is taking 4 tires, and Nick Woodbury is doing the same, so they should leave at about the same time. David Saber currently occupying the last points paying position in 12th, with David Junt currently 11th. Jakob Frugson in 10th, with Dana Shura actually in the pits, so that'll mean she will drop a few positions still. So let's see whether she'll rejoin before Dave Miller goes by. I don't think so, so Dave Miller will now take over the last points paying position in 12th, so Saber up to 11th, Leon 10th. Frugson 9th, then we have Anders Nilsson in 8th, Juha Boos in 7th, just a little bit ahead of Anders, Alberto Ibanez in 6th, with Richard Wilkes in 5th, just going by number 56, which is Jean-Francois Bovy, if I'm not mistaken. Then we have David Yates. Sorry, go ahead.
No, don't worry.
Okay. David Yates currently in 4th, 5 seconds behind Cesare Schlapinski. As Chapman, I believe that is in the number 46 car, had a bit of a brush with the wall there. Hopefully no major damage done. He will be able to continue. Austin Ogonoski in 2nd, and already 3.4 seconds now in front of Ogonoski is Diago Canola. Absolutely flying. Looks like there's even more of a lull in the action. The only action possibly going on right now by the looks of things is a fight for 18th and 19th for Ray Riddle and Jason Fitch. So let's stay with them for a moment here, see if Jason can get to grips with Ray Riddle, although it looks like at the moment Ray Riddle is pulling away a little bit. And he does indeed, so actually Austin Ogonoski has had a bit of a moment somewhere, because Schlapinski is now right up near him. Oh, but now Cesare Slapinski gets a little bit caught out behind. I believe that is number 40. That is Jason Fitch. So just a
Also,
little bit of drop time.
Berticchino is catching Bruno Chacon for 16th place.
That's interesting. I believe Alberto Junior were ahead of Chacon before the pit stop, so either Alberto has decided to repair a bit of damage, or there was some other kind of hiccup during his pit stop, but now right up behind Bruno Chacon's RAS car. Sorry, that's not the RAS car at all, is it? There's no one,
Speedway.
but Alberto Quino gets by. Mr. Finley indeed, thank you. I'm very sorry for misidentifying the car.
Highway 74. Driven by number 1, Bruno Chacon.
It is indeed, thank you.
Please.
So with that pass done, it looks like there will be no major action right now. No, the gap has opened up once again, so while we'll let the drivers bunch up a little bit, let's have a look at the trivia question that we have for you for this evening, so that you have something to ponder while we have the mid-stint of the race, where there will be a lot of transportation and less racing going on. So the question for you tonight is, who has led the most laps in the history of the Indianapolis 500? Which, as a matter of fact, is the total of 644 laps. Absolutely incredible number. Was it A, Al Unser? Was it B, Michael Andretti? Or is it C, AJ Foyt?
Very difficult. AJ Foyt was a legend of the 60s and 70s. Michael Andretti was in 80s and 90s, I think. Al Unser he did a dynasty on racing.
You will have more time to think about it if you want.
Okay.
Then we'll go for that. I'll ask you next time when we have a bit of time to do it, either after the race or shortly before the last pit stop, dependent on how the racing goes. But right now, Canola still in the lead, with Slapinski just now passing Ogonowski. So Ogonowski down to third. He won't be happy with that, I'm sure. He will certainly want to try and retake that position, or possibly sit here and save a bit of fuel. He's certainly in the draft. It sounded like he changed up. Looks like he's going to be sitting behind Cesarius for now. Oh, a lot of push for Ogonowski in traffic by the looks of things. Also sounds like he has a slightly different philosophy to many other drivers. He's using third in the corners, and then down the straight is changing up to fourth. Some interesting choice. Looks like Slapinski in that Toyota is going very quickly at the moment, but in the lead by 11 seconds is Thiago Canola.
David Jakes in 4th place is catching on Austin Ogonowski.
Oh yes, indeed, he's not very far behind at all. we have also, I believe, the first time being ridden aboard with a what sounds like a Voigt engine car. We can clearly hear the high pitch of the Voigt engine, and see how quickly he's catching up to Ogonowski. Wow! That's how big the draft is around this particular Indianapolis 500 track. Ooh, as David Yates has a big moment, able to hold on to it just.
Very impressive torque, and you can reach a very high top speed, 250, 270 miles an hour, so easily.
Clearly see that, and it seems like as soon as Ogonowski changes up to fourth, here it comes David Yates, and up the inside he goes, and looks like that was a simple task for Yates to take that position away from Ogonowski. Now we can see at the bottom of the screen Dave Miller being lapped by Serge Lapinski.
Thiago Canola, fastest lap, 47.007.
Very small improvements, but improvements nonetheless. I believe that's about 0.04 of a second quicker than what he did in the previous stint. So it seems about halfway into the stint is where he is at his quickest, and then he stays just a couple of tenths away from that overall. It may also be obviously a question of if he can get a clean lap or two together without traffic, obviously, which plays a big role, especially in these 500-mile races. When Richard
Also,
Wilkes.
Richard Wilkes. Wow, 46.888.
Wow! That's some blistering pace. I wonder if that was draft assisted or if he did that on his own. If that's on his own, that is very, very impressive indeed.
And it's very beautiful papaya McLaren.
It certainly is, and we can see that he is closing up to Ogonowski as well. It looks like the Sharks are starting to congregate close up to the front of the field and looking for a bit of an opportunity to make a position or two. So here we have Dave Miller in the McLaren, I believe that's the M16B. Ooh. I think Miller and Wilkes actually touched tires there. That was a very close call. I think Richard was expecting Dave to stay a little bit wider, or maybe Wilkes over anticipated how quick he would enter the turn there, and just barely managed to avoid spinning Dave Miller and possibly himself into the wall. It's a very, very close call here indeed.
Place. Also, Nick Woodbury was in charge for the 40th place with Lee Moore.
And I believe those two are actually good friends, so that would be an interesting fight to watch. Wilkes right up behind Ogonowski, and I noticed what looked like Bos and Ibanez not that far apart. Looks like Anders Nilsson has dropped back a little bit from Juha Bos in this particular stint. Maybe not quite as happy with his car or the tires in this particular one. And that's also one of the beautiful things with the way Richard Wilkes has worked on the tires
Also
here.
to pay attention for the battle for the place between Alberto Ibanez and Juha Bos.
Certainly looks like this could close up indeed, although Juha had a lot of understeer in 3 there and dropped with a pace. He had the double dirty air there with Ibanez going past Jason Fitch. And it's incredible how pronounced the dirty air actually is. The more cars you have in front of you, the less air you have, just like in real life. But even with just one car in front of you, it's very, very scary indeed.
Right, you have to prevent this loss of downforce on your front wing.
When there goes Wilkes, looks like he is making a move on Ogonowski. He has done and has gotten past. I think that happened in turn 3 maybe. Let's have a quick... No, it actually happened on the exit of 4. Just with a great run off the corner. And slingshots past. No, actually that's Acerclinth. Yeah, it did happen before the corner. Is it... Actually happened a little while ago. My apologies. Unfortunately, we didn't catch that on the broadcast, but Richard Wilkes is up into 4th.
Ogonowski is trying a back-to-back.
It's certainly something you would want to try to get at least, and looks like we're about 5 laps away from our next pit stop window. It'll be interesting to see if Ogonowski can gain time in the pits as he has done in the last few pit stops. And whether we'll get any closer running. As Dana Schurer has retired. Oh dear me, that looks like an off of some kind. Maybe even someone went off in front of her. Oh, looks like someone has spun in front there. She tries to come around. Adam... Oh...
So bad.
Yeah, that was Mick Chapman, unfortunately, who span a bit further up the road, and unfortunately Dana had nowhere to go in the end. Hopefully Mick will be able to bring that car around for the last few laps so that he can do the repairs at the scheduled pit stop point. But obviously that's not optimal. And that's unfortunately the end of Dana's race. Certainly one of those that was interesting to watch ahead of the race, to see how she would get on, and she certainly did a good job up until that point, but unfortunately bad luck does happen sometimes, and this was just one of those things.
Impressive the amount of position she recovered from the back of the field.
Very much so, and Ogonowski looks to be doing an early pit stop here, already on lap 87. He is into the pits and rejoining currently 10th, will be 11th as he gets off the apron, I think. That's very interesting. I wonder if he is fueling towards the end of the race now and trying to make that line up for himself. As you can see here, David Saber heading into the pits. As I believe that's Ibanez indeed leaving the pits up in front of him. Let's see what else. David Yates is into the pits. Oh, a very sharp entry to the pits there. I wonder if he couldn't quite see it ahead of David Saber's car there. That'll be a bit of an awkward exit from the pit lane there. As David Saber gets out, Jacob Ferguson now heading into the pits for his stop. Jean-Francois Bovy is in there as well. As it looks like those saving the most fuel at the moment seems to be Schlapinski, Wilkes, Canola now into the pits, Juha Boos, Anders Nilsson now heading for the pit lane. It certainly looks like Juha Boos, Richard Wilkes and Cesare Schlapinski are saving a lot of fuel this early on in the race. As Schlapinski runs one more lap here, as does Richard Wilkes. Let's see what Juha Boos decides to do. He heads off into pit lane. Here comes Canola. And that was Eric Plano right behind him. David Junt, I believe that is, heading towards pit lane. So a bit earlier stop for David this time around. So here comes Richard Wilkes now into the pits. Schlapinski decides to do one more lap. Let's see, here comes Schlapinski, I believe, going for another lap. That's very impressive indeed. Despite running at the kind of pace he's been running in the last few laps, he is certainly stretching the fuel as well, as here he comes. And I believe he is the final car to head into pit lane. Actually looks like he won't be too far behind Canola. As here he comes, Canola heads into the lead. And there comes Richard Wilkes now in third, Yates down to fourth. And Austin Ogonowski back to 5th. So I can't help but think that Austin would probably lose positions for the next couple of stints here, because he doesn't quite seem to have the pace at the moment. But someone who certainly has the pace is Cesare Shlapinski. He's closed in another 4 seconds since the pit stops, or during the pit stops, and it looks like it's fluctuating a bit more than I would like the time there, but he has closed in another bit of times during the pit stops, and knowing that he closed in during the last stint, I can't help but think that we will have a fight for the lead in the near future.
David Young close into Jakob Fredriksson, 9th position.
Let's see, so Nilsson 8th, so Fredriksson should be here any moment. Actually quite a bit behind. There comes Jason Fitch. Here's Jakob Fredriksson with Junt in close pursuit. And the leaders from Tiarcanola just flying past as well. Junt with a big loose moment in the dirt. Yeah, just about able to hold on to it. Nice save there, David. That will have been a bit of a trouser moment for sure. So we're closing in on half distance in the race. You can clearly see that David Junt in 2 and 4 is struggling to get the power down. As Canola sneaks up the inside of Jakob Fredriksson, David Junt will try to take advantage, obviously. Not quite able to do it, but good line, but runs a little bit too wide on the exit. Ooh, Fredriksson with a big loose moment, just about able to avoid a wall, I think. That slipstream clearly helping Fredriksson to hold on to the position. Both Fredriksson and Junt a little bit wide.
Closing to lap 100.
It's been a very hectic first 100 laps, so 250 miles. It'll be interesting to see what the last 100 and 250 miles has to offer. And another bit of time eaten up by Shlapinski in the fight for first and second. Very impressive to see him work that Coyote. It looks like that's the closest fight on track. Let's, as we are now heading on to the half-distance lap, let's have a look at how the field is running at the moment, where Tiago Canola holds on to the lead. He's only dropped the lead when he's headed into the pit lane and someone else has continued a lap or two extra, so very impressive run so far in this race. Cesare Shlapinski sits in second. Richard Wilkes for the Works McLaren team sits in third. A very neat, consistent drive so far, and I'm certain he'll still be up there fighting for the podium at least as we close into the end of the race later on. David Yates currently sitting in fourth for Dick Simon Racing. We've seen a couple of battles for him, but generally it has looked like he's tried to stay clear, take it easy, and just roll with it. Austin Ogonoski has dropped back a little bit since the start of the race, currently running fifth. Running very close to his optimal pace, but clearly a little bit off the pace of the quickest drivers at the moment. Juha Bors is in sixth for Leader Card Racers. And Alberto Ibanez has dropped to seventh from his starting position and starting early race position. Still running very well and keeping up the pace. Anders Nilsson currently in eighth. He's climbed a few positions since the start and has, since he hit that 10th position about 20 laps into the race, stayed very consistent in that area, as I believe that's Jean-Francois Bovy missing his rear wing heading for the pit lane. It is indeed, so whatever happened to him? Oh dear, him and Nick Woodbury ran together. Oh, the dirty air, I think, caught Bovy's car out. The car snapped on him, span towards the inside, and probably some suspension damage, and that lost rear wing. Very unfortunate for Jean-Francois. I really hope the team will be able to repair the car and he has no major damage to the suspension on his car. But we'll see in a couple of laps time when the team has repaired his car. Jakob Fröksen currently sitting in ninth for Grand King Races, still closely pursued by David Junt for Roy Wood's racing team. Both of them running a little bit off the ultimate pace, but keeping up a nice consistent drive. David Saber currently sitting in 11th for All American Races. Has stayed consistent, stayed out of trouble from what I've been able to see, and running fairly consistently in the mid to high 47ths. Dave Miller for Al Lacuesto currently holding on to the last points paying position, well ahead of the car behind and fairly far behind the car in front, but 12th position is nothing to scoff at, and certainly a good effort so far. Lee Moore currently in 13th, so just outside the points paying position, as someone has span off turn 4. Or is that David Junt who has had a spin? I've noticed he's been running sideways quite a lot. Yes, it is David Junt who has spun. Let's have a ride on board with him. Sounds like he has a bit of a turbo kick and he loses the car. Does he connect the wall? I believe he did with the rear end.
Roberto Iquino is charging on Nick Woodbury, 40th position.
Very sportingly takes a bit of time to get going there, did David Junt. So Lee Moore. Here's Nick Woodbury in the Eagles 17-14th. And right behind him is Alberto Iquino, Alberto Junior for Roy Wood's racing team, trying to catch up to the Eagle 70. touching the grass there on the inside of one, just about avoids the barrier on the outside. Alberto, in the meantime, had a loose moment coming out of one in the dirty air, just about held on to his car. So both of these drivers really trying hard at this mid-race time of the race. As here comes Alberto up the inside. Nick saw him coming and opened up the corner for Alberto.
Richard Wilkes, that new fastest time, 46.863.
Also an improvement by 0.003 of a second. Sorry, no, that's my apologies. 8.6. That's 15 thousandths of a second, I should say. So to round out the grid as it is at the moment, Bruno Chacon sits in 16th, just being lapped here by, trying to be lapped by another car. 28, that's Anders Nilsson, who's making his way past Bruno Chacon. Ray Rideau closing in on Chacon little by little in his Valmotor entered McLaren. Jason Fitch currently sits in 18th for Patrick Racing. Mick Chapman able to keep on running, so that's good to see at least, despite a spin and slight contact that it looked like he had with Dana Schurer earlier on for Fred Gerhardt. Eric Plana for Lindsay Hopkins, the Canyon Coyote, sits in 20th. Jean-Francois Bovy, after the repairs, looks to be able to keep on running, so that's very good to see. US Alberto Equino has a bit of a loose moment, trying to look up the inside of Bovy's car there, able to make that stick. And Dana Schurer is the first of our retirees. So last running at the moment is Jean-Francois Bovy. Actually looks like at the moment that Richard Wilkes is closing in on Cesariusz Szlapinski, while Canola has been able to secure that gap that he has at the moment.
Yeah, stable also on 16, about 7 seconds ahead is Cesariusz Szlapinski.
Yeah, it's certainly interesting to see how the times fluctuate between the drivers and the different parts of their stints, as Jakob Fröksen now is enjoying a bit of a calmer moment, as he was pursued by David Jund for quite a while and now able to run a little bit more on his own. Ooh, as he has a big moment as Richard Wilkes goes by. So even running side by side is very tricky due to the dirty air and the way the marbles are built up around the track. And that unfortunately for Richard Wilkes dropped a little bit of time to Cesariusz. So let's follow with him for a lap here and see how he gets on with closing that gap back now. a very rapid lap from Richard Wilkes, but it looks like Schlapinski more or less was able to answer up with a similar pace lap. Very close still in terms of the difference between them. I believe Wilkes may have gone about a tenth quicker.
The first three drivers are the only three drivers who set a time below the 47 seconds.
That's a very impressive pace, and also shows that the difference in the pace between the drivers are small and still close no matter which way you look at it, but that they are the only drivers that have been able to get down to such a pace is incredible, because I expect more to be able to get there, as someone has had a spin in the chute between 1 and 2. Just going to have a look and see if we can possibly find out who that was. No one has at least retired, and the gaps looks to be more or less the same between all the drivers. So I'm not sure who that would have been. By the way, I also noticed that Austin Ogonoski's pit crew is calling him to the pits. This seems very early for the pit crew to call him, but he is on his way into the pits once again. That's, as he pitted on lap 87, I think. So this makes this stint for him only 19 laps. That seems like a way too short a stint. I'm not entirely sure how he and his team are planning on working the strategy there, but that seems very, very strange, very off.
Probably they are planning the fourth pit stop.
Yeah, I suppose so, but still seems very strange. Although here is David Yates into the pits as well, so it is everyone pitting a little bit early maybe. David Yates now leaving the pits. I noticed someone else was in the pits. Alberto Ibanez is into the pits as well. And just leaving them now. So maybe it's, as you say, everyone just playing the strategy and doing the shorter pit stop now and doing full fills for the remaining what will be 2 stops. Nilsson now into the pits as well. And clearly Wilkes in these later stages of the stint is certainly able to catch up to Schlapinski, although Schlapinski looks to not be able to make any inroads on Canola. Sanders Nilsson now leaving the pits. And there's David Saber. Don't tell me he missed his pit stall. Oh, he did. Don't reverse too far. Don't reverse too far. Okay, I think that'll just about be okay. Oh dear me, that looks like Canola and Saber has the same pit stall. That's very unfortunate for Saber. Although it would have been unfortunate for both of them, no matter how you look at it, because if not, then it would have been Canola who would have been held up. So very sporting from David Saber to not push him too much there. But very, very unfortunate indeed, and very frustrating that will have been for David Saber. So that may very well, it has indeed dropped David Saber outside the points. For now, it may very well have dropped him out of the points completely as the pit stops play out. As David Yates just has to let Ogonowski go by, as there comes David Saber out of the pits. Oh, and more trouble in the pits by the looks of things. Whatever is going on here. Richard Wilkes was sideways. Whatever happened then? Don't tell me those two also have the same pit stall. It is indeed the same pit stall again, so Miller is in this pit stall that Richard Wilkes had, and then Wilkes stalls the engine by the looks of things. I think he did, so he has to then restart the engine and get back going. That's massive drops of time for everyone, and Schlapinski has a bad entry to his pit stall as well. And maybe Richard Wilkes is even repairing damage here because he's stationary for quite a while. Dearie me, this is not good. Really unfortunate Wolverine. And so Eric Plana has retired as well amongst all of this. So what happened to Eric Plana and the Canyon Coyote?
What a nerve-breaking moment.
Oh, looks like a big off for Eric Plana, unfortunately. So right on board with him going into turn 1. And the car just breaks loose immediately. And then there's nothing he can do, and a very big crash. Dear me. That's very unfortunate to see. So Wilkes drops all the way down to 10th. It's so unfortunate for Wilkes, he had such good pace. That means David Junt now moves up into 9th, Fredriksson up into 8th, Bos up into 7th, and it's Nilsson all the way up into 6th.
Wilkes lost also 2 minutes. Too bad for him.
That's very, very unfortunate indeed. It's just one of those things. I'm not sure why the pit stall would have been shared. I know there is more pit stalls than there are entries in this race. So I don't know if all the bandwidth issues that occurred very early on in the race has had an impact on that. But no matter how you look at it, that's very unfortunate. And Schlapinski has dropped a lot of time as well, as he is down into 4th, 28 seconds behind David Yates, who himself is right behind Austin Ogonowski.
Look at the 3rd position and the 5th position.
There is indeed. Now Ibanez looking up the inside in what I believe is turn 1. Both of them very loose coming through too. So that moment shows in terms of pace. As Limo exiting the pits there, dropped Alberto Ibanez a little bit of time. slow as he also touches the grass in two. At a drop time, that was almost a second off the ultimate pace that Alberto has gone so far in this race. That he dropped on that lap when they were running two sideways, too wide gone through turn one. So unfortunately, both of them drop away from each other, but although Fredriksson is in between Yates and Romanowski, this battle still looks fairly close, but the one running from ear to ear, I reckon, is Thiago Canola, enjoying a 24-25 second lead at this point in the race.
To the fourth pit stop, so we can all raise up this gap.
When I notice Nick Woodbury has retired in the Eagle 70.
Oh, yes, he was in battle with Jason Fitch before. For the 16th position.
Interesting, he's in the pits. I wonder if that's possibly an engine gone or something.
Range Larry Cannon. Eagle shape. Eagle 70.
Let's see. Very revved up and then stalled. Not sure if that's the engine gone then, or if because I know there's onboard starters on these cars, but possibly the engine was stressed already, and with that stall it just wouldn't restart, because he seemed to have been trying quite a while before deciding to park the car there. We can see David Junt and Richard Wilkes 9th and 10th running very close together there. And it looks like the gap between Ogonowski and Yates is staying fairly open at the moment.
Also Ray Riddell and Bruno Chacon. 15th place.
Also, these two are back at it once again, or at it. I didn't. I know Ray Riddell was closing in on Chacon earlier, so maybe Riddell just passed Chacon a lap or two ago. So it was indeed unfortunately a blown engine for Eric, also Nick Woodbury. That didn't really sound like your typical breakage. It was more a stressed engine put under a bit too much stress, and it just wouldn't take it anymore. There's Alberto Equino there. Let's Thiago Canola past. And unfortunately for us, it looks like all the cars are spread out with decent gaps between all of them, so no battles going on.
Probably David Jakes on Austin Ogonowski for second place.
And that certainly seems to be the closest one. And I wonder if Ogonowski was, I wouldn't quite call it sandbagging, running the pace he was earlier, but maybe just taking it a little bit easy. Because he seems to be able to hold on ahead of David Yates now. Although of course that is 27 seconds that both of these guys has to try and regain on Thiago Canola, and that certainly ain't no easy feat to accomplish. Took through one, a bit more loose and a bit more Larry coming through two there. Looks like he's keeping up with Ogonowski very well indeed. This could be a bit of trouble for Yates though, as Chacon is now in between them. It's just the way the track works and the way the lappings work. Looks like Chacon is running fairly low wings. So Yates is now looking up the inside, able to make that work. Compromised entry into two this time round though, but very, very nicely handled. Only dropped about 2 to 3 tenths to Ogonowski that time round. Both are running very, very close to the wall. Definitely not holding back by the looks of things. You can see there, as Gabriele mentioned earlier, the dirty air with David Yates taking a slightly tighter line on the entry to try and get some clean air on his front wing early on in the turn, then runs through the dirty air and takes a bit of a higher line on the exit to regain air on his front wing. This time a bit more right behind Ogonowski, loses time. Same there, very loose on the exit, able to hold on. David Yates was very worried about both knowing how the washout would be and knowing about fuel economy, but by the looks of things he's fairly well situated here, sitting up third, and also a little bit in the same boat as Ogonowski, a little bit fortunate with those pit stop mishaps for Wilkes and Schlapinski.
is a little trick that we know about save fuel race drivers can use the fork to save and very close to the third gear to have a longer gear and save a bit more fuel than on third one.
Mhm. But
And
as a
this can be useful when you are on a slipstream and you raise up your speeds, then you want to save also the engine till the end.
Mhm. Very true, and a bit of a trade-off, you don't really use that gear if you run on your own, because with the slightly higher revs, you don't have quite the same power delivery in either of the Offenhauser or Voigt engines, and therefore, if you don't have the draft in front of you to help you, you drop time with running that higher gear. But as you mentioned, if you're running behind someone and you're able to use the slipstream, that's a very, very, very good way to save a bit of fuel. And I'm also very intrigued.
Something happened to David Yant, I think.
Oh, really? Oh, wow, he's back quite a bit. Oh, dear me, yeah, he's running slow. Oh, without a front wing. Whatever happened here then? Oh, that's not a good place to end up after a spin. Oh dear, let's have a look here. Let's jump on board. Heading into turn 2. Just on the exit, the car snaps. Doesn't look like he had any chance to save that. Very, very well done to keep it to the wall though. Everyone running the inside line to make sure there's no risk of damage for anyone. And Junt, ooh, that looked a little bit close though, but Junt waiting until there's a big gap to stop the car completely, and then turns the car back round and gets going. So very good control of the car there, but unfortunately that means David Junt probably will have no chance to score any points in this particular event.
Richard Wilkes set the new fastest time, 46.743.
Wow, so over a 10th improvement. That shows how good a pace Richard Wilkes has. Very, very unfortunate indeed that he had a bit of a pit stop mishap and dropping quite a lot of time, but still in the points and still in with a chance to climb at least one position outright, and possibly more, as there's still over a quarter of the race to go. When there's someone in the pits, let's see who that may have been. Was that David Junt possibly leaving the pits after his repairs? It is. And now it looks like some of the faster drivers are peeling off. That's Ogonowski into the pits, so often the one to look for when it comes to the pit stops. Ogonowski back in again. I believe he stopped on lap 119 as he misses his pit stall by about a car length. So that is... Okay, that seems a little bit more correct. 25 odd laps, a little bit short still, but hopefully he knows what he's doing and will be able to do it on one more full tank of fuel. As he exits the pits, and that means Anders Nilsson is up into the top 5 for the first time in this race. As far as I'm aware, at least. Looks like all the leading cars other than Ogonowski is going to go for at least another lap as Ibanez continues on. So now Alberto Ibanez, pit crew seems to have called him in. As here comes Ślepinski and Wilkes. Here comes Ibanez heading for the pit lane. Canola coming around as well, continuing for one more lap. So a few of our drivers cutting it a little bit fine on fuel, as I believe that's Lee Moore running a little bit wide coming out to turn 4. Ooh, and looked like a bit of a late call, but that's David Yates heading for the pit lane. Looks like Ślepinski will continue for another lap. As here he comes along with Wilkes, both of them continuing for one more lap. As Canola actually continues for one more lap. Oh, as someone has had an off. In the background we can see the car parts. That's a yellow one. I'm not sure who that would have been. Not Dave Miller. Oh no, it's David Junt with another off. Dear me, looks like the damage was heftier than I thought with just the front wing earlier. Let's jump on board with him once again. Bit of a laggy replay, but looks like he may have hit the wall on between 3 and 4, and then the car just broke loose once again. Another hefty hit with the barriers.
Probably he was just upset because set his best time the lap before in 47.3.
Oh dear.
True.
And then it was probably him pushing a little bit too hard, wouldn't you say?
I'm kind of overdriving.
Ah, indeed. Okay, so with that, looks like most of the pit stops has occurred. Here is Thiago Canola in the pit stop. Let's see what happens with Ślepinski. Looks like Ślepinski's pit stop has been quicker, because here he comes across the start-finish line and goes up into the lead. We have a new leader in so Ślepinski. That's incredible, considering the immense lead that Thiago Canola had. The only thing I could possibly consider is that Ślepinski hasn't pitted yet, but I would have thought he would have pitted by now. See, Yates is back there, so Ślepinski possibly haven't pitted yet. Again, Ślepinski running very long stints. I can't think that he would try to stretch this too much longer, but he'll certainly have a very short stop to end off the race. I wonder if that's possibly a tactic of doing either two or 4 tires now. Yep, he's now signaling that he's heading for pits. I wonder if he's possibly looking to do a 2-tire stop and just fill up his splash and dash at the end. I believe Ślepinski is on the Goodyear tires, isn't he?
Now entering in the third quarter, the final quarter of the race.
We are indeed, as Ślepinski slows down to a crawl to find his pit stall. not very easy, as Dave Miller has the pit stall ahead of him and has just headed into the pits as Alberto Junior heads out to the pits, and Canola retakes the lead of the race. And David Yates clearly out in front of Cesare Slapinski at the moment. We have Boss fourth. Austin Ogonoski is the one who has lost a lot of time. Someone has a bit of a moment coming into the pits as well. Whatever was that about? Looked very strange. That's Dave Miller. Dear me, was that? Oh, that's him coming out of the pits. I would call that the turbo kicking in and spinning him around. That's very unfortunate for Dave, as he has to do a 3-point turn. As mentioned in the qualifying for this race, these cars are certainly not made for your standard car parks. And unfortunately that means he drops to 13th and Bruno Chacon is up into the points in 12th. I know Mrs. Dave won't be happy, and neither will I'd assume Barry Lynn, Dave Miller's fan club, but I'm sure Dave will have the pace to at least challenge Chacon for that 12th place, as we will have one more pit stop before the end of the race.
And they are teammates in Williams' team in 1991 series.
My apologies, I wasn't quite sorting out the camera properly there. I just had a check of the chat for the broadcast. Hopefully you will be able to bear with me as I mess up more. We have been, after all, been going for about 2.5 hours here, and we have at least another 30 minutes to 45 minutes left in this race, so certainly can feel some of the strain of doing these long distance races even in the broadcast booth, but it is a lot of fun. And Greg Moore very sneakily has gotten up into the top 10. That's very nice to see. A newcomer to
battle for 5th position between Alberto Ibanez and Anders Nilsson.
Well, Anders Nilsson, I know, will be very happy with that kind of position. Alberto has a lot more experience of oval racing. I believe this is one of... Oh, as someone has had a massive off in turn 4, lost a wheel. And that's presumably Mick Chapman, unfortunately. Seems to have been indeed. Oh, already with damage on the right side from that earlier incident, and the car just breaks loose. And very hefty hit with the outside barriers, and understandably he heads for the pits and a early retirement. Very unfortunate for him. He was doing a good job, only that one little hitch earlier, as far as I've been able to catch for him, but just one of those things. As Lee Moore is into the pits now, so that means Bruno Chacon will be up into the top 10. I think Bruno will be very happy with that. And that means Dave Miller is back up into the top 10 and actually into the 11th position as well, with Saber right behind him in 12th. Oh, and someone has had a big off. Oh, dearie me, no! Oh, whoever was that ahead of those two? Well, as Dave has lost it again, without wings in both ends this time. Hopefully he'll be able to recover the car to the pit lane and finish the race. Looks like he's just waiting for a clean space on the track. He does indeed. So let's see if we can find out whatever happened there. That looked very unfortunate indeed. Let's see, so Dave Miller with Saber with a run, looks up the inside. We have a big crash up ahead here. It is
Alberto Ibanez has got retired. Too bad. No.
Oh no.
No.
So Alberto Ibanez is off, and that's is that Jason Fitch possibly with the SDP number 40? It is indeed.
Yes,
Oh,
falling down in
dearie
that
me.
car.
Dearie me. That's so unfortunate. Ay, ay, ay. So Dave Miller trying to crawl back into the pits. Jason Fitch unfortunately retired with that. Let's see if we can catch what happened on the replay for him from his point of view. Oh dear, he was coming out of the pits. Oh no, the turbo kick. Ay, 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 ay. Unfortunately, he couldn't control it and Ibanez had nowhere to go. Oh. I know both Jason Fitch. I know Jason Fitch will be distraught with that, and Alberto will be extremely disappointed. Oi, 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 the dearie me. So very unfortunate indeed, as Dave Miller now finally makes it to the pits, but that's a very crabbing car. I'm not sure that car will be making it to the finish, but if he can manhandle it into the finish of the race, he will try. As Bruno Chacon has been into the pits and drops to 13th. So that's Ray Riddall up into 12th. Alberto Junior in 11th. Lee Moore in 10th. David Sayre in 9th. Jakob Ferguson in 8th. Richard Wilkes now in 7th, with Juha Boos in 6th. So Anders Nilsson has jumped Juha Boos during the pit stops. So Anders into the top 5, unfortunately, due to Alberto Ibanez's demise. Cesare Shlapinski in 4th, 14 odd seconds behind Ogonoski, who is another 13 seconds behind David Yates, who is only, I say only, but he's gained quite a bit of time on Canola since those pit stops. That's very, very unfortunate indeed, dearie me. Ay, ay, ay. It's unfortunately one of those things that happens, especially later on in the race when everyone is feeling tired. 2 hours into the race, 160 laps. It's certainly not easy to do no matter what. And with that, it looks like everything has more or less calmed down. Dave Miller still in the pits, David Junt heading out of the pits after possibly some further repairs. Jean-Francois Bovy still running after his repairs to his car. In 18th will be... that's 2 places, so he'll be 16th in a few laps time.
11. Ups, down. Ah. 40 laps to go.
Yep, and since we are about 8 laps and no major action on track as such, for position at least, as I can see that Dave Miller heading out to the pits after the repairs, I hope he'll be able to continue. But seeing as the action is fairly calm at the moment, let's revisit that trivia question and see if we can get the answer right for this one. So to remind you of the trivia question, it was for this event: who has led the most laps in the history of the Indianapolis 500? Which in fact is a total of 644.
No.
Pardon?
Can you remind me the names?
Certainly. Option A is Al Unser, B. Michael Andretti, or C. AJ Foyt?
I'll answer.
You're going with Al Unser? Okay. And Barry Lynn has also gone with option A, Al Unser. And the correct answer is A. El Anse, Berlin and Gabriele. Congratulations on getting the trivia question right.
Great.
I must say I got it wrong because I actually guessed on AJ Foyt when I saw the question. I based it on the fact that because he's been racing since the 60s up until I believe the early, well, at least late 80s. I sort of expected that he would have led enough laps to actually have the most total laps led, but obviously I was wrong. But really well done to both you and Barry Lynn.
Thank you.
Let's see, back to the action. We have Thiago Canola still in the lead, now 22 seconds ahead, so he is pulling away from David Yates. So clearly, unless Canola runs into trouble, I think he will be walking away with a win this evening. David Yates is obviously then in second. Austin Ogonowski sits in third for being his first race in the 74 cars. I know he did a race or two in the 73 cars, which have less aero and are far more nervous and more power. At least more aggressive power delivery. But very impressive to see him do this well in these cars.
Your predictions after the last pit stop. Who will be the man?
Very, very difficult to say. Also
I would
depends.
bet on to Canola, but probably it's too easy. But also David Jakes made a wonderful race.
For sure, for sure. I would say one of those that has impressed me the most this evening, for sure, is Anders Nilsson. As far as I'm aware, this is his first ever venture into oval racing, especially with these kind of old IndyCars. I think the closest he's gotten to oval racing is doing the Daytona 24-hour, where you run part of the oval track. But as far as I'm aware, he's never done oval racing, and looks like he's more or less taken to it like a duck to water, and currently sitting in 5th, which is very, very impressive indeed.
For you, is the rookie of the day?
Certainly the rookie of those that I know who hasn't done oval racing before. And seeing as we have quite a few retirees as well, who would you think is most deserving of the Jäger Award?
I would mention also Cezarius Klapinski, but he was a bit unfortunate
Oh,
on
certainly.
the middle of the race.
Ooh, as he strikes the wall just then. So maybe driving a little bit ragged at the moment, a little bit aggressive. But very understandable if that's the case, because as you mentioned, he is one of those unlucky drivers. The other would be Richard Wilkes, who's lost a lot of time during pit stops. Rapinski lost about half a minute, I reckon, and Richard Wilkes obviously lost 2 minutes.
2 minutes.
Let's see, we are just about reaching the point where the drivers should be able to make it home. If they decide to pit now, the question is who will bite the take a bite out of the apple first and head into the pit lane.
30 laps to go. We are close to the last pit stop window.
Yep. Oh, just as I cut to him, Alberto Equino has the massive loose, but he holds on to it! What a save! Oi, 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 oi! Big applause to Alberto there, that's one hell of a save. Just on the exit there, the car breaks loose, and look at that save. Wow! Wowee, what a ride! That's certainly probably the closest call we'll see today to getting any kind of damage. Wow! Wow, wow, wow. Well, that got me all excited. Let's see what the pit stop has to offer. They surely can't be that far away now. As
30
Thiago now
laps
has
to go. Race
28.
order.
Yep.
First, Thiago Canola. Second, David Jakes. Third, Austin Ogonowski. Fourth, Cesarius Klapinski. Fifth, Anders Nilsson. Sixth, Dua Boss. Seventh, Richard Wilkes. Eighth, Jakob Fredriksson. Ninth, David Saber. 10th, Lee Moore. 11th, Alberto Equino. Close the points. 12th, Ray Riddle.
And to finish the field off, we have Bruno Chacon in 13th. Dave Miller in 14th, doing a good job, but obviously quite a few laps down, so it will be very tricky for him to score any points, unfortunately. David Junt still holding on and running in 15th, and last running car in 16th is Jean-Francois Bovy. Let's see now what the pit stop does, because as I expected, Austin Ogonowski is in with 27 laps to go.
And after that, all the drivers, I think, will be flat out.
That's certainly true. They'll stretch it as far as they can, I reckon, and then fill up a little bit extra to be able to run in the race gear, which is third gear. As here comes David Yakes into the pit lane. So that's fairly early for him, but I reckon he thinks 26 laps is well enough to be able to run it in third gear all the way. And there comes Schlapinski. There's Equino. Here comes Chacon, and not entirely sure which driver that would have been behind him. Jakob Fredriksson possibly. Here comes Canola to finish another lap. And David Junt continues one more. Ogonowski right there. There's Bovey. Here comes Richard Wilkes. And Lee Moore behind him, followed by Dave Miller. Schlapinski going for one more lap. As does Fredriksson. Canola continues for one more lap. And here comes, I believe that's Anders Nilsson heading for the pit lane. As does Bruno Chacon. So Schlapinski and Canola has continued. David Yakes has been in the pits. So it'll be interesting how this plays out. Ogonowski has been in the pits, 3.8 seconds behind David Yakes. Bos, I believe, hasn't pitted yet. Richard Wilkes in 6th at the moment, and it's Nilsson in the middle of a pit stop, actually taking all 4 tyres to be able to run as hard as possible going towards the final stint of this race. David Saber 9th, Lee Moore still continuing around, as does Equino and Ray Riddall. Let's go back up the grid once again and see what's going on. Canola has continued, as has Schlapinski. David Yates still struggling to get up to full racing speed, it looks like, or if it's possibly the extra fuel that's slowing him down compared to Schlapinski and Canola up ahead. Here's Anders Nilsson, first lap out of the pits, 15 seconds behind Fredriksson, ahead of him at the moment. Saber still not pitting, neither does Lee Moore by the looks of things. Canola is in, so our leader is in. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's able to get out before Schlapinski comes around, by considering the big lead he has. He actually decides to go for 4 tyres. Here comes Schlapinski out of the final turn as Wilkes peels off into the pit lane. So Schlapinski takes over the lead of the race as Canola exits. And let's see, Schlapinski actually, did he do the quickest lap of the race right there?
Yeah. 46.640.
Wow. So
New record.
new race lap record, and very impressive pace indeed. That's definitely not far off what we saw in qualifying runs. And it looks like David Yates has not been able to catch up to Canola much. He's about a third, 1 second behind. Let's see what Schlapinski does. He continues for 1 more lap. Joa Boos looks to be continuing, as looks like Fredriksson will do. Anders Nilsson obviously actually now catching up a little bit to Fredriksson by about a second by the looks of things. It was a very close call, obviously. Richard Wilkes has of course been into the pits, about 20 seconds behind Anders Nilsson, so it'll be a long shot for him to get by Anders Nilsson in this race. But it looks like he has actually made his... No, that's Joa Boos actually a lap. About a lap, almost a lap ahead, so that'll be very tight indeed as Juha heads into the pits in a couple of laps' time. You see Schlapinski into the pits and Canola not far behind at all, so Canola will take over the lead. The interesting thing will be, how will the difference between Schlapinski, Yates and Ogonoski be as Schlapinski heads out to the pits. You can hear, yeah, so Schlapinski really holding it ready to go. Actually only takes 2 tires and a quick splash of fuel. That's a very quick pit stop. So there goes Yates in 2nd. That's Saber. That's Ogonoski in 3rd. So Schlapinski will come out about, make that about 7-8 seconds, I reckon, as he comes through 3 here, behind Ogonoski. So let's see if Schlapinski will be able to chase after Ogonoski for 3rd position in this race. Schlapinski, I believe, maybe a little bit irritated here because Junt didn't let him by, but Junt looks to be very quick at the moment. He's been running low fuel himself, so it's one of those things. It's 5.6 seconds as there goes Schlapinski past Junt. So it's 5.3 odd seconds behind between Ogonoski and Schlapinski. I do believe Schlapinski is a little bit quicker than Ogonoski. To go. certainly everything to play for our remaining runs.
Now, sorry about driving.
Yeah, and I reckon this will be the most tiresome 18-19 laps these drivers will have to do all season, as they will be going all out, but with worn bodies, worn minds and worn cars. Because even though you try to be careful in these races and stay out of trouble, you can't avoid picking up a little bit of damage here and there, no matter what, because you're forced to run so close to the limits. See, Richard Wilkes 12 seconds behind Juha Boos. I think that's a bit too far behind at this point in the race. Ferguson 8th, Lee Moore actually up into 9th, so David Saber back to 10th. Equino running 11th, and Ray Riddle exiting the pits in 12th. It looks like he'll be able to hold on ahead of Bruno Chacon. So let's go back to the front of the field, because it looks like it'll be a very close finish for 2nd, 3rd and 4th. Can see David Yates up ahead. It's a very big carrot to have to help you gain a little bit of extra pace. That being said, now that Ogonowski is stuck in the dirty F behind Juha Boos, of course in his own race, Slapinski is closing in on Ogonowski, so there could still be a battle for 2nd, 3rd, 4th as we close in towards the end of this race. 13 laps to go. Slapinski will now using all the road and a bit of grass as well to try and eke out the slightest bit of extra performance there is. Really hugging the wall towards the turn in, heading towards turn 3. We can really see how Ogonowski is being held up behind Juha Boos. I'm sure this will be frustrating Ogonowski to no end. But obviously, if he can't stay close enough in the turns, not quite quick enough. Slopinski has a big moment there. He can't get close enough to actually demand that Juha moves out of the way. As mentioned earlier, Boss is himself in battle with Anders Nilsson and Richard Wilkes. As Lee Moore has now pitted, I see in the position charts, and he's down to 10th from 9th. I think he too will still be happy with that finish. Finishing this race at all is a massive proof of both endurance and strong will.
Losing a bit of time trying to pass lapped cars.
Possibly that, and maybe just taking it a little bit easy. He knows he only needs to win by half a second. Although of course that's 10 seconds, or 10 odd seconds he's dropped. That's playing it a little bit close. So are he actually behind Ray Riddle and let's see as they come through 4 here. Dave Miller, okay. So maybe Thiago just doesn't want to take the risk of passing them, lapping them. Obviously that is giving David Yates a small chance to get up there. Simon will be on the driver here. Let's quick driver, there we go. So on board with Oganowski looking back towards Slopinski. Still maintaining that 3-second gap, but still in behind Juha Boss.
The race order will remain the same as now. The championship leader will be Thiago Canola, followed by Zarius Pinsky, and then third will be David Jakes.
That's very tight indeed, and in the middle of this leading battle, I noticed there's a duo running very close together. Anders Nilsson and Juha Boss running pretty much nose to tail, 7/10 between them. So Anders has dropped a lot of time in the last few laps. Not sure if that's down to traffic or what's going on there, but that's quite a bit of time to drop. And as we can see, the car right behind him there is Juha Boss. This could be a big battle coming into the final couple of laps of this race. As well as the battle, obviously, for second and third and fourth. And that also gives us an idea of why Juha Boss didn't let Oganowski pass, because now Juha Boss is looking up the inside of Anders Nilsson going into turn 1. Oh, almost touching tires there, but Anders holds on around outside. Really good defensive drive there from Anders Nilsson. holds on for now, but there's 7 more laps of that going on here for them. Make that 6 because the leader is a lap ahead. And now Ślepinski right behind them.
Faster the Ogonowski.
Oh dear me, he has indeed. So he must have gotten a good run coming off for the turn 4 on the start-finish straight and made that pass then. So that is very impressive indeed. I wonder if Ogonowski has anything to answer up with. I don't think he does. And now Ślepinski is in the difficult position of trying to lap cars that are fighting for position themselves. This certainly won't be easy for either of them. Now Ogonowski is actually trying to get past Ślepinski. Ślepinski may have had a bit of a moment.
Five left to go.
So this will be a very hectic 5 laps. Obviously, Juha Boos will be looking to try and get past Anders Nilsson. Ogonowski will be trying to get back past Ślepinski. Well, Ślepinski has a massive moment going through too once again. And now Ogonowski should have a bit of a run down the straight. Actually not. That Toyota is very sleek and aerodynamic down the straight. Look at that beautiful line from Ogonowski. Gets some clean air in his front wing and is able to stay really close. Oh, someone has had a spin! Headed into the pit lane. Someone has had a spin, hit the wall on the outside and headed into the pit lane. No, not Thiago Canola, surely! Oh, dearie me!
No!
No, it can't be true!
No.
What?
An earth brake.
What? Was that a screen freeze or something? And then he was collected by Ray Riddall. I can't believe it. Thiago Canola has retired and David Yates has taken the lead.
Yep.
Just what rotten luck? Just how? I never thought I'd be speechless with such a massive lead. Wow. And that means Ślepinski and Ogonowski is fighting for 3rd and 4th. Sorry, 2nd and 3rd. And Anders Nilsson has romped away from Juha Boos by a couple of seconds, so now Juha Boos is forced to let Ślepinski by, and I think that will mean there's no way for Ogonowski to get past, as we are on to what I believe is the final lap. Oh, what rotten luck for Canola. 3 laps from the end. Oi, oi, oi. So let's give David Yates his due. He stayed right at it and stayed within distance if something were to happen, and something certainly did. I believe Canola will still be scored as 8th place in terms of the points, but clearly he would have hoped for a lot more than that. But David Yates heads toward the start-finish line and takes the win. No, sorry, that's just the final. Oh, I never learned how the AMS laps work. My apologies. We are now on to the final lap. What I've just said still applies. David Yates has driven a very consistent, nice race. Let's have a quick look. Ślepinski has gapped Ogonowski by about a second. Anders Nilsson is still pretty well ahead of Juha Boos. Richard Wills is still actually pretty close behind now, but I don't think he'll be able to pass in time. We'll see as they come towards the start-finish line, but David Yates heads out to the final turn and will take the win here at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Fantastic win for him.
Wow.
Slapinski takes third. Second. Ogonoski takes third. Anders Nilsson gets fourth. Fifth for Juha Bors, just at Richard Wilson sixth. Seventh will be Jakob Frögsen as he comes out of the final turn to finish the race. I think he'll be pretty happy with seventh in the end. It looked like he didn't quite have the pace here tonight. So seventh for Jakob Frögsen, eighth for David Saber, ninth for Lee Moore. So Saber, I believe, has finished indeed. Lee Moore has finished in ninth. Alberto Equino gets finished in 10th. Bruce Chacon gets 11th. Thiago Canola, it looks like, will be scored in 12th. So a very lackluster amount of points considering where he was when there were just a few laps to go in the race. Dave Miller, unfortunately, will finish 13th, just outside the points. Ray Riddle, unfortunately, was forced to retire after that late race incident, will finish 14th. David Junt gets 15th with Jean-Francois Bovy in 16th. 17th for, and retired unfortunately, the rest of these will be retired, Ibanez, Jason Fitch, Mick Chapman, Nick Woodbury, Eric Plana, Dana Schurer, Simon Watman, Tim Hiller, Adam Hackman, Hervé Sabathe, Alan Forster, Brian Yannick, Filippo Marazzi, Jason White, Raoul Ireb, and Jan Kowalski.
David Jakes, and he was third in the Michigan 200 and won the Phoenix 150. Today wins the Indianapolis 58th edition 1974.
That's certainly very impressive indeed, although I would say a bit on the lucky side overall, with the way the race generally went in the end. But certainly very impressive drive from him to be able to stay within contention and take advantage when things didn't quite go the way others would have liked.
Very clever driving, as usual for him. Impressive. He managed all the situations well.
User joined your channel.
As we are now joined by our winner, David Yates. Congratulations on, I hesitate to say, but probably a bit of a fortunate victory.
Well, yeah, there's going to have to be a lot of looking into what happened there. I don't think I deserved that. Thiago was lightning out there and ran a stellar race, so I have no idea what happened. And then just before I get off that, the Robert Fletcher boys, bad luck. Like Brian, he was discoed or something at the beginning. I don't know what happened. He was way out in front and in the front group and was gone.
I think what we came up with as a explanation for what happened there was a broadband issue of some kind, like not broadband, like bandwidth issue of some kind that caused that those early retirements.
Such a shame, because I know he really put a lot of effort in preparing for this, so I'd like to dedicate that to him. He would have been up there, and same with Thiago. So I'll take it, because makes Trenton feel a little more palatable. But it was a long race, lots of moments where it was real easy to lose focus. Had to recenter and keep it going, and seemed to go on forever.
Yeah, it was certainly a long one, over 2 hours this race. I believe in the end it was about 2 hours 30 and change. And I did notice you had a few battles early on, but then sort of just spread out. Were you happy with that, or would you have preferred to have a bit more closer running with more slipstreaming, do you think?
My car really liked being in traffic, so that would have been good. At first, I was concerned about the fuel, but I was able to save enough, so that wasn't too much of a concern come the end. Even though it looked like we were kind of out on our own, like it seemed like everybody was trying to do two tire stops periodically, so we were kind of like in cycle, out of cycle on the two tire stops, and I didn't pick up on that till right at the end. So that that I really thought I was risking it because I wasn't sure what I was going to do, but that put me in contention to battle with Austin. Otherwise, he would have been clear of me, I think. So I'm glad I took that gamble.
Yeah, we did. That was certainly an interesting part of that. We saw you running with Austin a little bit in the race, but then it looked like your pit strategy worked out a little bit better. But overall, I reckon the racing was good, and you had a really good one going. How do you think your chances will be at the next event?
Better than I thought it was going to be here, even though I shouldn't say that with how it turned out. Like, you never know. Anything can happen, so you just got to run to the end and see. Later in the schedule here, where we get some of the short tracks, that's kind of where I like to run. So hopefully they work out. Unfortunately, not worth as many points as these ones, but they should be fun.
Yeah, next round will be the Wisconsin State Fair Park. So with what you just said, I'd expect you to hope for another win there then.
At least to run good. Wins are like, it's so competitive here. You can't count anybody out. At least 10 guys any race that can win. So you just got to run your best and stick it out to the end and see what happens. That's what happened this time. Really feel bad because I've been in those spots, so I don't want to celebrate too much. Like
That's very understandable.
it's got to be a not fun experience to be running so far, so long in first and not be able to bring it home. So that's a shame for them.
Yeah, so that's certainly true. So yeah, thank you very much for joining us, David, and congratulations once again on what turned out to be the fortunate win. Doesn't look like we have any others lined up. Do you have any questions or any final thoughts for Dave or for the race, Gabriele?
What to say? Well deserved, David Jakes. Well deserved.
Well, I want to say thanks for you guys for sticking out the broadcast. I'm going to enjoy that later, I'm sure.
Hopefully it will be a good one to watch. Caught a few Harry Larry moments, especially I'd say the save of the race will have been for Alberto Junior with about 40 laps to go. That was quite the moment he had, among other things. Some really good battles as
I'll
well.
keep my eye out for that.
Yeah. To finish off, let's have a quick look at what's coming up at ISO in the near future. On Wednesday, the final round of the Australian Super Touring Championship, rounds 15 and 16, will be on at the Amaru Park circuit, a slightly retransfigured track, which hopefully will mean a bit easier and a bit nicer to race on. Should provide some close, tight racing, even though The championship is nearly sewn up. I believe there is still a very, very minute mathematical chance for Richard Wilkes to take the championship there away from David Junt. But we'll see on Wednesday how that pans out. And on Sunday, May 31st, in 2 weeks' time, Jason White will be back in the booth and bringing, along with Alberto Ibanez, I believe, or it'll be me, bringing you the British Grand Prix from Silverstone, which should prove to be a very interesting and neat little race. Having had a quick go at the circuit as they tested us to see what needed to be fixed, we've done a bit of fixing to the track. It's very neat and nice to drive now and should provide some really good racing.
It'll be fun.
For sure, and I would believe you, Gabriele, would be hoping for another podium finish there.
I hope so. I hope so.
Sounds good. So, from us here in the broadcast booth, we would like to thank you all very much for watching and tuning in, and hoping that you enjoyed what you got to see here tonight, and that you will tune in 2 weeks' time for the F1 Championship race, and that all the races in the future will be as entertaining and as this one. But until Sunday 2 weeks from now, take care and have a good couple of weeks. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone. Thank you, Jonathan.
And thank you very much, Gabriele, for joining me in the booth as color commentary for this race. It was very helpful and very, very nice to have you here.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you very much.